Okay, so it's me again, Jeff Anthony here. I was going to talk to you guys again today. I'm here outside of my house in Costa Rica. It's about to start raining. The wind's probably going to pick up. Thought it was a good time to talk to you guys about uh, just continuing about going inside of your heart with love and forgiving yourself first, and moving past all of the things that have held you back up till now. So the thing that I talked about last time was kind of moving on from difficult traumas and things like that. And so today I wanted to talk about detoxifying or detoxing your heart and your mind. And the way that you can do that I found is to tell you a personal story. I'd been in the military and had a few things happen to me, and was discharged from the military with a degenerative muscle disease, and was told at the time that I would be in a wheelchair within 5 years and bedridden within 10, and that I wouldn't be able to do all these things. So what happened was 3 years ago, tomorrow actually, today's June the 5th of 2012, and tomorrow on June the 6th, 3 years ago, I fell down and I broke my pelvis in about 4 different pieces, and I had to have a pretty big surgery to put that back together, and some titanium plates and screws and put into my pelvis and hip, and then at that time I was told again that I was never going to walk again, and that was probably it, that I was done because of the other pre-existing things that I had. So it was a very hard time for me. It was very depressing, and I was in a very, very deep long-term depression that I'd already been in before I broke my hip, due to just being generally angry and upset about where I was, and with the muscular dystrophy type of disease and all that. So what I did was, as I was laying in that bed with the broken pelvis, I remember looking out my window here at nature and looking at the trees and all this beautiful stuff that you see behind me here. And I remember just this overwhelming feeling that I was coming unraveled, and that all the anger and all the hatred and things like that I had used to motivate and propel me thus far since 1995 with this disease was burning me up inside, and I was just I was breaking. I felt it in my heart, I felt it in my chest, I felt this feeling of just unraveling, and that I was going to snap or break. And I didn't do anything at the time because I didn't know what to do. I had already read a lot of books and combed all over the place for spirituality and self-help things, and I was very into the Tao, and I'd been raised in Christianity and all these things, and so it all felt I felt very lost at the time, and I had tried before to forgive people and forgive things in my life, and it just didn't work. And ultimately, the reason it didn't was because I hadn't forgiven myself, and I hadn't let go of all the things in my past. I hadn't come to the agreement with myself that I wasn't going to judge myself anymore for all those things, and I hadn't decided to take back my life and live my own life. And slowly I started to work that out, and I started to realize that I hadn't really forgiven all these people or my past. And when I truly, honestly went inside of my heart with true honesty, not my version of the truth, true loving honesty, I found that I didn't like a lot of the things that I saw, but I didn't judge them anymore. I just decided, okay, I'm a little bit arrogant in this area, or I'm kind of a bastard about this or that, and I could really start watching these things, and I could really sit with that for a while. I didn't immediately forgive anyone. I just concentrated on being selfish and working on myself and forgiving myself and not judging myself and loving myself and starting to understand that I was a lot more than I had been led to believe I was, and I was capable of a lot more than I had been told I could do. So I just sat with that for a good while, and I started feeling better and doing my therapy and getting back on my feet again, and that was enough for the time being. And then what happened was I wanted more because it felt good, and I wanted a lot of these negative thoughts and feelings to go away. I was just tired of them. And so what happened was I figured out I had to forgive. And it got a lot easier to do because I'd stopped judging myself. I'd forgiven myself at that point. I'd started seeing that I was coming more from the heart. But I still had these toxic thoughts in my mind from time to time. You know, people cut you off in traffic and they're an idiot instantly and you have no idea who they are. Or, you know, just questionable things like that. And what I found was that I had always had the capacity in me to do nice things for other people. But as I forgave other people for things that I assumed that they had done to me, or maybe they really had done, or even forgiven them for things that they didn't do because they promised me they would and didn't, and you know, all these things that you don't realize that you're holding inside of you. And then forgiving your past ancestors and, you know, even past lives, because even if you don't necessarily believe in reincarnation, a lot of times you'll find that there's something bothering you that you don't quite understand, and maybe it is something from a past life, or maybe it's something from your ancestry that you got to forgive and let go, and then you really start to grow and expand. And so I did all that, and then, you know, I found that, like I was saying before, doing some nice things for other people that I had been doing a bit of along the way. But, you know, for example, I have dealt with disability, and I've dealt with depression, and I've been in the very deep 10-year depression that I just thought I would never get out of. And I did, because I, you know, ultimately just allowed it all to happen. And I remember when, you know, one day I was driving down the road and I saw a guy in a wheelchair, in a powered wheelchair, and he was stuck in a hole in a sidewalk. And he just had the, you know, his little joystick pushed forward, and the wheels were just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I told myself, okay, I'm going to go up to this next light, and then I'll turn around, and surely by then somebody's going to have helped this guy. So what happened was I go up and I turn around and I drive up next to the guy, and nobody's helping him. And the guy is, you know, there's, other than just being, you know, disabled, the guy had some, you know, deformed arms and legs, and he didn't have full mental capacity, let's say. And so no one was helping him out, and I couldn't just leave my car because I was in a lane of traffic. And so I decided to turn down the driveway of the little grocery store there. And as I pulled in, I noticed that it was a very steep, grassy hill to climb up this hill in order to get to the sidewalk up above. And at the time, I was struggling with my personal disability as well, and was this was 10 years ago, so I was, you know, good 8 years into this disability that I have had myself. So I kept looking up there thinking, man, you know, this is 10 or 12 feet of for me, I'm going to have to get on my hands and knees and just grab the grass and just heave myself up there. And the whole time I was on my hands and knees doing it, I thought that somebody's going to come and see me down on the ground and going to think, what the heck is this guy doing? Or somebody's going to push this guy out of this hole, which would have been great, but as it happened, no one ever did. And I did see people walking by as I was climbing up the hill, but nobody noticed me, and no one seemed to notice him either. And ultimately I got up there and I lifted up his little arm of his chair, and he caught traction and sped off, and he raised his arm and said thank you. And I slid back down the hill and got in my car and went on to school. I was on my way to classes that day in college. And those are just little examples of things that you can do. Other examples, they're out there all the time, and people do them. You see a kid in a store. I do this all the time here in Costa Rica. You see a kid in a store, and they're trying to purchase something, and you see the cashier kind of shaking their head, like, you don't have enough money, and I just walk up and pay for the thing. Just little things like that. That make you. They feel nice. It feels nice to do things for other people. And it starts to warm your heart. It starts to come from the heart, and it starts to detox your mind. And then you start having loving thoughts and looking for ways to help instead of looking for ways to judge. When you don't judge yourself and you don't judge other people, you really do leave the space for them to grow and for them to forgive themselves and change. If we all stopped judging each other, a lot of people would change. You'd give them and allow them the space to stop drinking or abusing drugs or whatever it is, maybe even to just stop talking to you the way they do, and you'll find that as well, that as you start talking different and sounding different and looking at things different, all of a sudden those people that talked negative or, made you feel uncomfortable just aren't going to be around in your life. So it's very important that you understand that it's absolutely possible to detox your heart and detox your mind, and you do it by putting yourself in your heart and putting loving thoughts in your heart all the time. And then all of a sudden you're going to find that you're just filling your mind with loving thoughts and with thoughts of helping other people. And that's going to make you feel really good, and that's going to help you, and that's going to allow the space in your heart for really great things to come in and start to change you, and for you to start to realize that you are manifesting all of this, and that you're creating everything in your life, including the sickness, including the anxieties and the stress and all those things that are just causing your life to spiral and spiral and spiral. You want to put a spin on that in the other direction. You want that to go your way. And the way to do it is to detox your heart, detox your mind, go inside, love yourself, and then you start to become aware of things. You start to become aware that you're not necessarily, able to judge other people for their past, because you realize that you weren't even awake for most of the things that you were doing. You were just running someone else's program, like I talked about before, or you weren't living consciously. And if no one taught you how, and you learned your life from your parents or caretakers, then who taught them how or didn't teach them how? And how could you judge them for no one ever showing them? And it's not their fault that they didn't step inside of themselves, and there really is just no right and wrong. You start to realize that. And it becomes easier and easier in every moment to realize that you just have to love and forgive, and forgiveness and those loving thoughts they start overwhelming your mind. And before you know it, all you're doing is loving and doing for others. Yeah, I mean, do I still get upset? Yes. I have 2 boys. I have a wife. I have responsibilities, you know, and I have things that happen to me. But what I realize is that these things are happening to Jeff. They're not happening to me. And I am only observing what Jeff is going to do with what happens to him. And it sure is a lot more fun to help Jeff to enjoy all these funny things that happen to him along the way. And maybe help guide Jeff. Because I realize that it may seem as though you're trapped in your mind, or that you're trapped in your thoughts, or that you're trapped in somebody and that you can't get out of it. But if you live in your heart, you'll realize that you're not trapped in that body at all, and that it all really is okay, and it doesn't really matter. There is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. There's only choice. And you always have the choice. You choose to decide if you want to have things affect you later in the day that you should have dealt with earlier in the day. If your children, you know, dump the entire carton of milk on the floor, you know, if you choose to go back later in the day and chew them out about that, then that's your problem. It's not their problem. It was an accident that happened. And you should deal with those things and move on. You're only feeding negative energy and, you know, mental addictions that you have to your own anger and your own feelings of hormones raging, because that's just your body. And while you can't control many of those hormones and adrenaline and things that'll come due to anger or fear or all those things that you will feel because you can't stop feeling. You know, one of the most important things I ever did for myself when I was in a super deep depression was when a bunch of doctors tried to stick me in a wheelchair and told me I couldn't walk anymore. And I got upset, and I told them I wasn't going to leave the hospital in the wheelchair. And I told them, you know, that this was my life and I could make my own choices, and they kept insisting that I do physical things that they knew I wasn't capable of at that time. So I became very upset, and I showed my frustration, and they brought some security people to the room I was at, and they escorted me to the psychiatric ward of this hospital I was at, and they made me speak to a bunch of different psychiatrists who were not listening to me, and finally they stuck me with someone, and they all wanted to put me on lithium and Prozac and all these things, and I ultimately just told the guy they sat me with, look, I'm just a human being and I'm having a human experience here, you know, and if I'm upset or I'm sad because of something that's happened to me, then I need to be upset about that. I mean, that's a true human emotion, and I need to be sad. But you know what? I'm not always sad, and I'm not always mad. You guys are just seeing me today. I have a lot of joy in my life, and I you know, smile, and I laugh, and I do all these things, and those are only my emotions. And if I start taking these pills so that I can be happy all the time, or I wouldn't even call it that, because it's numb, it's not happy, you're just not feeling anything, then that's not going to help me to deal with these emotions at this time. And then I will be sick. And I remember the doctor looking at me and agreeing with me, and I couldn't believe it. And he told me, I think you're one of the more sane people that I have talked to, because I believe you do understand, and you have struggled, and I understand your pain and where you're coming from, but you understand it as well as only part of the experience. And all these things were necessary in order for me to come to this point where I could share this stuff with you guys. I mean, I couldn't talk about many of these things for many years. I was severely depressed. I would cry when I talked about my physical disabilities, and I didn't want to share it, and I didn't want people asking me questions, and I didn't want anyone to know. And I had a lot of pride involved in that, and I finally let all that go and realized that I need to feel these things, and I need to figure out who I am, and I need to start loving myself for who I am right now. with all these diseases and this broken hip and all these problems that I have, I need to love myself right now, exactly the way I am. And that is unconditional love. Loving yourself is what unconditional love is all about. It's not about unconditional love for your partner. That will come. If you have unconditional love for yourself, well then now you have the ability to allow unconditional love to flow to someone else. But if you don't even love yourself, how could you possibly love someone else and then be in love with someone else when you're not even falling in love with yourself? Many people have tried to wonder and answer why there's so many divorces and failed relationships, and it's due to that. People don't realize they don't love themselves first. I mean, this is logical. If you don't love yourself, do you really think you can love someone else truly and accept them for all they are or all they are not when you haven't even done that with yourself? So, I just wanted to share some of these things with you today, show you how you can go and step inside of your heart honestly with truth, and you'll find a deeper truth of love, of honesty, and of how these things will detoxify your mind, quiet your mind, and quiet your thoughts so that you can begin to meditate or journey or whatever it is you choose to do, and to find your higher self and to find all those answers that you have. You already have them all inside of you. And that's what I came to realize. Stop running away from yourself, because you will only distance yourself from the truth and the knowledge that you have in your own heart. Because no shaman, no monk, no priest, no preacher, no minister, no guru, no one will ever know you as well as you know you. You can only know yourself. Okay? So no matter how many people tell me their story, I won't know their story as much as they do. Because I can only assume that they're telling me the truth. I have not lived their story. But I'm living this story, and I am the awareness observing all this. And because of that, I just want to share all this stuff with you guys. And I'm going to end it here for today. Remember, step inside of your heart with love. Love everyone. Love yourself first. Do it to yourself. Trust in yourself. And you'll see, your life will change. And as always, I'm Jeff Anthony, and I just want to wish everybody much love. And I'll see you guys real soon.